Good evening, everyone, or whatever time it is you're watching this. Welcome back to Ember Productions. I'm Maxwell Haddad, the M, and of course, with me is
Amber Coats Lover. Hi.
we are joined by two utterly resplendent special guests today. Below me, we have Allison Salamone from Flick and Reel. She's also started hosting a new podcast called You've Never Seen It.
Yep.
Where Allison and a special guest talk about a film that Allison has never seen before. I may or may not have recorded an episode of this recently, but not going to say what film or when it's coming out, but it was a blast. And then also we have Dan Bettenhausen, is that correct?
That is correct.
From the Fantastic Forecast, which is a really fun podcast where Dan and a guest pick a director and then fan cast who they think that director would cast as the Fantastic Four and what that movie would look like. I also guested on this podcast recently where we talked about if Greta Gerwig made a Fantastic Four movie, and it was a blast.
It was a lot of fun.
It is so nice to have both of you with us this evening.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
And of course, we are here to talk about a little film that if you have not seen, get off your computer, go see it immediately, because full disclosure, not that this is necessarily a movie wherein like there are surprises or mysteries, but this will be a full spoiler discussion. We're going to talk about everything about Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, directed and co-written by Dean Fleischer Camp, who, by the way, just an aside, was announced will be directing Disney's live-action Lilo and Stitch movie, and it is the first piece of information about that made me be like, maybe I'm
into it.
Yeah, I'm into it.
I'm into it in the live action now because of this than I ever was the animated. I know a lot of people love it. Was never my thing growing up.
Fair enough. It's a favorite of mine. But I think, and we'll get into all of this, I think
I worked at World of Disney for a number of years down at a good old Disney Springs back when it was downtown Disney. And I had to stock that goddamn Stitch wall with the giant stitches, with the little stitches, with the medium-sized stitches, a lot of stitches.
Just gonna sit here and hold my bellhop Stitch and be like, I love him so much.
I would argue that Stitch is an all-time top 5 Disney character, but that's a whole other thing.
That's a whole nother video.
We are talking about adorable, cute, adorable small characters.
We are.
Yes,
true.
Small, SMOL, small.
Small.
I love him.
So before we get into it, I'd just like to note that Marcel the Shell with Shoes On started about a decade ago as a short film. At the time, the filmmaker Dean Fleischer Camp and Jenny Slate, who also co-wrote the screenplay and voices Marcel, were married. They have since gotten divorced, but they've obviously maintained an amicable relationship. They worked on this film. It played festivals last year in 2021. I think it premiered or played at least at Telluride, and now it's playing in theaters nationwide or close to it. So again, if you have the opportunity to go see this movie, please go see it. I think Amber and I, when we decided we want to do this roundtable, we picked Allison and Dan because they have been incredibly vocal about their love for the movie, and they're also lovely people.
Oh, yes. And Marcel is lovely.
I'm pretty sure seeing this movie, there was maybe about 5 to 6.5 minutes where I wasn't crying, and that's only because I ran out of tears, had to reload, and then started crying again.
Fair.
Yeah.
So the first time I saw this movie for the second time just today, the day of the recording. But the first time I saw it, Amber and I saw it together at the Alamo Drafthouse in Brooklyn, where they serve food. So we're like eating a full dinner while watching this movie while crying. So there was definitely, I was like, wow, these chicken tenders are really salty. It was my favorite.
It was all my tears.
I just imagine all of us are standing in our own puddles of tears like Marcel was in the movie at some point.
I needed a raincoat. I was like,
and that's such a lovely image too, with the spiders down below. And you just, at first you just see the water dropping and then they reveal what it is. But in the interest of organization, there are 5 areas of discussion that we have planned. for this evening's roundtable. And I think now is a good time to dive right into the first one. And that is, what impact did this movie have on you, / how did it make you feel? Let's start with Dan.
Yeah, so I think Allison can attest, because we were in, before I really got introduced to you, Maxwell and Amber, we've been in some group chats. Once this movie was announced, I was gung-ho, #1 like cheerleader for it. I loved the videos that were produced like a decade ago. So I'm like, okay, give me more Marcel. It was right in my sensibilities, and really it living up, if not exceeding my expectations, just filled my very large body with glee, joy, any sort of synonym for all of that you could. I mean, this may sound hyperbolic, and it probably is not going to get the recognition it deserves, but this script from start to finish, arguably each line had some sort of emotional impact on me, whether it made me smile, laugh, sad, think. Like, really, there was no filler as far as each line of dialogue. And from minute 1 to minute 1, hour 30, I was engaged the whole time.
Oh yeah. Preach.
Absolutely. Oh
That's
yeah.
wonderful. I love that. It's always gratifying when something you're super excited for delivers, because I think one of the follies of the modern movie system, where we can know so much about a movie before it comes out, particularly with, the blockbusters, but even sometimes the smaller films, from casting to production to if there's, some malfeasance going on behind the scenes, we hear about it, right? And so sometimes we'll be so excited for something, and then because of that excitement, it just can't live up to that. So to hear that this movie lived up to your admittedly lofty expectations is so wonderful.
Like I mean, you've been on it. I run a Marvel podcast. Like, I love the big blockbusters. I love the Marvel stuff. But when a movie about this tiny shell just existing is my most anticipated movie of the year and has now cracked my top 5 movie of all time, that says something. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a top 5er for me. And it solidified after a second viewing.
I would agree. Oh my goodness. Like, I just thought about it when he said this cracks top 5. I'm like, yeah, it does. Holy crap.
Well, so that begs the question, Dan, obviously you're a film fan, you study film to some degree, you host a film-based podcast. I for me, and this is not meant to disparage you, but for me, it takes time and multiple viewings to say, this is one of my favorites of all time. I think the most recent movie in my top 20 of all time is from 2016, and before that's like the 90s. So the fact that you are here confidently stating this is in your top 5 favorite movies of all time is astounding, and I loved your passion.
So I look at it, if we didn't have the source material, it may not have, but I've had 10 years to live with this character, go back and revisit it even before the film. This film is just really an expanded and more poignant version of those original YouTube videos. So to get something that was so not only hilarious but heartfelt, that was not only an expansion but improvement on those videos, that's why I feel confident I can say it, because I've lived with this character. We've lived with this character not just in the span of this film's release schedule.
So you're saying you would be the guy or girl who gets Marcel tattooed on their arm?
I have a note here. It's like, I would get a regrettable tattoo for sure.
Why would it be regrettable?
I'm just referencing the movie.
Fair enough. What about you, Allison? What impact did this movie have on you? How did it make you feel?
Oh my gosh. I just adore this movie. I remember, again, same thing, Marcel, with the YouTube shorts and watching those 10 years ago and loving them. And then going, and I remember when I first realized they were making a movie was when I saw the trailer when we went to go see the other amazing A24 film, Everything Everywhere All at Once. And the trailer played and I was sobbing. Like, it was instantaneous. I got the look from my husband of like, and she's crying again. Cool. Movie hasn't even started and this is a trailer. We are fine. So I've been looking forward to this since that moment. I've watched it. I've been telling everyone about it. And then going and getting to sit down and see little tiny Marcel on the big screen doing his cute little Marcel thing, such as, one of my favorite when he goes, people like to say my head's too big for my body. And I say, compared to what? Like, it's just,
yes.
Oh my gosh. And it's just the fact that like these little scenes, just like in the YouTube short, like you don't know where they're coming from. You don't know why. You don't have a what with any of it. It's just a bigger, longer version of these cute little things that just warm your heart no matter what. No matter what kind of mood I'm in, I can go and watch these and it's gonna put a smile on my face. And talking about it just puts a smile on my face because it's such a amazing way to look at life, the way that Marcel looks at life and Nanny Connie now looks at life, like just the way that they go about doing their things and this constant just positivity and adorableness. Like the YouTube shorts, you know what I use for a trench coat? A piece of ham. You know what I mean? Like it's
am I the only one who every time Marcel said Nanny Connie, I'm like, is he talking about manicotti? Like every time.
Hey, he used a noodle as an instrument, so
he did use a noodle as an instrument. And he
used
wants a piece of lint for a dog. You know what I have for a dog? A piece of lint.
Here, Alan, come on, let's go, come on.
I can't help it, guys. I'm like, oh, he's so cute. Oh my god.
How did you get stuck out here? Well, let's walk out the door. And then it kind of shut behind me. And so, yeah, I'm stuck. I came out here to get this grape.
Oh, goodness. You mentioned your husband, Allison, and how he was like, oh, she's crying. Did he see it with you?
He did. We went to go see it together.
Did he shed a tear or two?
He did not. He's not as much of a crier as I am. He's kind of the opposite of me when it comes to, he'll cry. Like the movies that I have, like I saw him crying the end of Coco. Before that, when we were dating, he told me the only movie that's ever made him cry is the end of Little Giants. Nothing else had made him cry up until that
Little Giants. I mean, listen, I like Rick Moranis as much as anyone, but wow.
Listen, I think anytime a kid goes running to a parent, it just pulls at his heartstrings for some reason.
Fair enough.
And then, but like me on the other hand, like Marcel sneezes and I'm a puddle. Like,
yes, absolutely.
Marcel throws up on a map. I'm a puddle. Like I can't.
The most adorable birthing scene in film history.
I'm so sorry.
I don't. Vomiting is the one thing in movies I'm like, is that really necessary? It doesn't affect me. It doesn't like gross me out, but here I'm like, that's cute. That's adorable vomit.
It works. It's his first big road trip. He's not used to being in a car.
What about you, Burr? What impact did this movie have on you? How did it make you feel?
So I only saw my first A24 movie this year. And that shocks some people and doesn't surprise others. Because I'm a movie person, but I'm not like, I have niches when it comes to movies. I tend to be like superheroes or, things like that.
I'm doing as much as I can to ruin that for you.
Yeah, you are. You really are. Recently gotten myself into horror movies. I don't even know what's going on there because I was like, oh, I love horror nights, but I don't like horror movies.
Not anymore.
Oops. Unless it was Scream, and then I could do that. However, Marcel is my number one of the year. And
Me too.
I would say it's in my top 5. Which right now my top 5 is literally Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, The Little Mermaid, the Lego Batman movie, and Marcel. Like,
I love it.
That's my top 5. And like it barely edged out Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that's an amazing movie, and it's made like, you can tell that there's the same amount of heart, which is something that I find in A24 movies. There's so much attention to detail, there's heart, there's love put into the process of filmmaking, which is something you don't necessarily see with a lot of other movies. And I loved that throughout the movie they worked in the YouTube videos and the presence that Marcel had already had amongst this, smaller crowd. And then leading up to it, you get Jenny Slate doing Marcel voices on Saturday Night Live, which I love her. And like, it's just, there's something about such a pure movie in this world where we're bombarded with people fighting and negativity and just, excuse me for saying this, but bullshit fuckery all the freaking time. And to get something wholesome and cute and just heartwarming and so sweet, it like, the whole time, and Maxwell can attest because he was sitting right next to me, I'm sitting there eating my pepperoni pizza, crying into it, giggling like an idiot, about to like spit popcorn everywhere, just like, this is amazing. And he's just like, he keeps turning to me and I'm like, I love it so much. I saw on my own. And like, I don't even know if that was English, but I mean, I was excited when he went on his adventure. I was excited when he found his family. And to see Cheetos with faces, I was like,
the little Chex Mix pieces. Oh my God.
Like, not all my family looks like me. Some of them are different. Some of them are food. And I was like,
some's a tampon.
Like, check? There was a check.
There's a
Some was a push-pin cushion.
It's so great.
Why? I mean,
and
why
like,
not?
Right.
And everything about it, like, I just really wanted these little tiny magical creatures to be real, to be watching 60 Minutes, to be fanning over Leslie Stahl. Like, I was just like, they are obsessed with Leslie Stahl. In what world is that a thing? Who, like, and
She's
the thing
fearless.
is, she's fearless. I was like, oh my goodness, this is the most precious thing I've ever seen. And by the end, I was just a mess, and all I wanted to do was talk about it. And like, Max was like, it was amazing. It was really good. And I was just like, but this part, oh my God, I love this part, and then this part, and the garden, and like, and I'm just, yeah, that was me. I was a mess afterwards, but I'm always a mess. So more of a mess. Yeah.
You were a mess plus.
like I'm a subscription service. Like,
yeah,
honestly,
exactly.
while you guys were
the new streaming service, Amber is a mess plus.
Like, while you guys were talking, I was literally trying to figure out if I can stream this damn movie. So if it looks like I wasn't paying attention, I was just like, they don't have it anywhere. Normally Vudu has it, and it's
I'm
nowhere.
sure it'll be available soon enough.
Yeah.
So for me, the interesting thing is, both of the times I've seen this movie were tough days for me. So the first time was not too long after I broke my toe. So I was in an immense amount of pain. The pain is...
I'm sorry. I saw you do it, so I just can't stop laughing because it's so
you
stupid.
did, and I also paused because you froze for a second, so I'll just edit in some footage there. It'll be perfect. It'll be amazing. So yeah, like, so the first time I saw this was not too long after I broke my toe, so I was in an immense amount of pain. And Amber kept at, like, she would like look over to me because I was pretty straight faced because I was just trying to manage the pain. But like, it transported me to this, it takes place in our world, but there's something so elegaic, and I don't know if this is the right use of this, but it almost has like this cottage core aesthetic to it, where it's so lovely and warm. Like, I would describe this movie as cozy, and And then today I mentioned I saw it again, and today frankly was a really shitty mental health day for me. And I think there's power in talking about that, because we need to destigmatize people struggling with their mental health. And so coincidentally, both of the times I saw it, I was struggling with different things. And this movie, in so much as art can, serves as a salve for my soul, right? Like I'm not going to sit here and say it's going to cure all your ailments, but I think the beauty and warmth of this movie really has the power to connect on a deep level and help you navigate some really tough stuff. Because, and we'll get into this later, it has such an optimistic quality to it and such an innocence. Marcel being a shell with shoes on, whose entire universe for the majority of his life is one house, has such an innocence about him. And it's almost a fish out of water, because in this movie, we see his world expand out. He, like, the first time, so the filmmaker Dean Fleischer Camp plays himself in this movie basically, and is a character, and as the movie goes on become more and more of a character. And he's talking about how he's making this documentary to put it online, and Marcel goes, "You lost me." So even Marcel doesn't even know what the internet is, and he goes on this incredible journey. He goes on a road trip where he has to have his match and his needle in case there's a fight. His little helmet.
Shell helmet.
It's a shelmet.
It looks like this.
You know, or he gets to be on
The fact
TV.
that we just did that at the same time. Thank you, powers that be. We share a brain.
You know, there's something very comforting about this shell who has a very limited world expanding out, but in the interest of finding where he belongs. And I think that is a universal, relatable idea. Because I would argue the human condition, from the day we are born, we get consciousness, and then whenever we die, people are like, well, what's the purpose of life? And I think the purpose of life is to find where we belong, find that community that accepts you for exactly who you are, find the people who lift you up and who don't want to change you, but want to help you be your best self. And that's Marcel's journey. So this is really a powerful parable for the human condition, all told through this stop motion animated show.
And it's funny that you say that, because the next question, literally, that was an answer for the next question, which is, what message can people take away from it? And
we love a segue, and I don't
we
mean
do.
The
love a good segue.
Yay! Well, because I mean, like, Maxwell, as you were just saying, you could probably build on top of that. Like, the message is, find your chosen family, or find your found family, or even find the family you're missing. Like, I think that's something beautiful to build upon. And, like, Allison, what message did it give you? Like, what did you come away from it with?
I definitely came with, obviously, that search for family, that search for belonging, the emptiness of, having a family, losing them, and then finding them again. And it could be finding your same family, finding a new family. I think that's an important part in all of this, because not only is he going back and finding his family, but he creates this relationship and this family with Dean as well, who's there as himself, and you see their relationship kind of grow and flourish through all of it. I also think you get a really good message on the idea of perseverance and finding the silver lining in things. There's a lot that Marcel goes through that could break him down. And even though he struggles with actually doing this 60 minutes interview, because he can, after everything that happened when he went on the first part of his journey and people broke into the house and scared and hurt Nanny Connie, and he's like, nope, I'm all done, I can't do this. It took her showing him how to kind of persevere and push through to achieve those goals and to achieve these things that he has always kind of, that these things that he wants. So, and having the outlook on life that sometimes bad things do happen, but that doesn't mean life is always going to be bad. And that doesn't mean everything has to be taken so seriously and so cautiously. There's so much that you can do, no matter how big or how small you are. You just have to go out and do it, and do it to the best of your ability. And I think that really is another big takeaway for me as well.
Yeah.
I love that. And what about you, Dan? What did you
Yeah,
take from it?
I'm probably going to expand a little bit on here. We learn Marcel is an extreme, and Nana Connie are extremely resourceful characters. It's incredible what they've been able to do in their sphere. Um, but what we learn through the passing of Nana Connie is, or I guess to your point, we're talking about Marcel's fears. There's a line I'm trying to remember. He said, I'm afraid of losing what I have. Something along the lines, I'm afraid of losing what I have. And I think we all are like that. Like, why are we so, we get so consumed with where we're at. Sometimes we become stagnant, and we become afraid of taking that next step, taking that risk, whether it's career, relationship, just becoming a better adult, a better human being. And that's one thing that I think this movie also really taps into the power of grief, and what, again, with the passing of Nana Connie, and the poem that she reads about trees turning into leaves, and uh, their greenness is actually a sign of their grief, and that they're just getting older and soon will pass, and that Marcel needs to learn that she's not going to be there, and he still has to live his life. One thing I think this movie also really poignantly criticizes is online culture. Like, you first see Marcel in awe of the 84 views on the first video, which is so sweet and endearing. It's like 84, those are 84 new people who watch the video, and it's like, yeah, like, oh, that, like, he just looking in awe of this. And then when he makes the call to action, like, hey, I need help finding my family, and all these people are commenting, finding his house, taking selfies in front of it, commenting nothing, like, oh, love and peace. And he's like, oh yeah, because I'm not for peace. I'm actually gonna say, war and everything. Marcel.
That part slayed
I'm pro
me.
war.
So
I'm
funny.
pro war. What do you?
I'm a war guy, But my point being is, he makes a line like, this isn't a community, it's an audience. And I think
Mhm.
very much for these circles, the people watching, the people who produce content, that is something we have to face ourselves. Like, I love that people listen and participate in the stuff. That's still an audience. It's not a community.
Yeah.
And I'm very fortunate that I've built a community, and I'm sure we've all built a community of friends and found family from the stuff we've done. But all in all, we can't rely on those consuming internet content to be our friends. We have to go out and build those relationships ourselves.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Maxwell, what about you?
Well, there's actually one thing in particular I want to touch on beyond what's already been discussed and beyond what I said before. And Allison sort of spurned this in my mind. So, Marcel's looking for his family. He does this live stream, which is so adorable. And then I have to assume, like, in some of the documentary footage that Dean posted, that their interest in 60 Minutes became known because the producers of 60 Minutes do contact Dean and Marcel and want him to come on for an interview. And Marcel is very, very hesitant because he's worried about his grandmother's health. He doesn't want this whole film crew coming into the house and disrupting their status quo because he's so worried on the impact this might have on his grandmother. And when his grandmother, Manicotti, finds out about this, she decides to sort of put all of her pain and her ailments and her age aside, and for lack of a better term, fakes it till she makes it. And I found this quite powerful because, listen, Amber's the best friend I've ever had in my life. And I also spent a lot of time in therapy dealing with my mental health. And I have increasingly found power in the notion of mind over matter. This is maybe something that even a year ago I would have rolled my eyes at cynically and said, that's Tony Robbins garbage. But the older and more mature I get and the more positive influences like Amber I have in my life, the more I realize that pain happens, we break our toes, we get older, we get sick. But at the end of the day, it's up to us as an individual to decide how we are going to choose to handle that and how we are going to outwardly manifest ourselves. And yes, it might be a slight manipulation tactic on the part of Nana Connie because she wants what's best for Marcel, and she knows that Marcel is being so selfless by saying, no, we're not doing this interview because I'm worried about my grandmother. She does the same thing for him. She selflessly fakes her level of health. She pretends to be eating. She pretends to be ebullient and happy. And all of a sudden her joie de vivre comes back.
The shot of the pink crayon broke me.
Oh yeah.
Right? That's what I was, oh my God. It
when
destroyed me.
when Marcel saw her shish kebab that was sitting out in the dirt was another one. I think it's you talk about that fake it till you make it, and how often do we just put on a brave face, right? And how, life is always gonna happen no matter what. You can't control life. What you can control is how you deal with it and how you handle it and what
there it is
and what you do moving forward with it. And that's, I think, is Marcel was trying to control life, and Nana Connie's like, you can't control life.
Yep. Like,
this is why you need to do
none
this.
of us know when we wake up tomorrow what the day may hold. We all have jobs, we all have people in our lives. We don't know if there's going to be a crisis or someone's going to be mean to us, or we all have social media presence. We don't know what nonsense or garbage may be thrown our way, but it is up to us to choose how to handle that. We can put on a brave face. We can choose not to wallow. And I think that's more than anything, more than what you have both so eloquently and passionately talked about, I'm taking away from this movie. We can make up our own mind as to how we want to handle everything and how we want to reflect ourselves out. I spent a lot of my life, especially my adult life, sort of like moseying around as a very dour, pained person. And that pain has not necessarily subsided, but I'm making an active, concerted effort to present myself more positively. And then I find that just by doing that, it has the good effect backwards of me being like, oh, well, yeah, that really terrible thing happened, but I don't have to wallow in that. And I think that's a lesson Marcel learns from his grandmother.
We had a conversation about that today.
We did.
There's a line near the end where he found his family, they're back, and he goes off to the laundry room to go to the slightly cracked open window, and he's excited. He discovered this sound that only he can hear when the wind passes through his shell. He's like, I wouldn't have learned this if I wasn't pushed to do this by Nana Connie. And then the last line of that scene is, I've learned to enjoy the sound of myself connected to everything. And that really reminds me of what you were talking about, Maxwell.
Yeah.
I literally totally believe that I have that as a quote in my phone and forgot about it. Yeah, I truly enjoy the sound of myself connected to everything. And like, that's literally what summed this movie up for me. And the whole time you guys have been talking, I literally texted Maxwell and I was like, I'm about to cry because so much about what you guys said is so integral for this movie for me, because we talked about finding family. We experience loss, and sometimes it's just loss of friends or loss of family or loss of a job, or sometimes it's all of it. What if the people you work with are your found family and you love them more than anything, and that ends? And that really hit me. But also doing something that terrifies you. And like there's this existential feeling of dread when you look at this big thing that you have to do and you don't know how to do it, and you're just staring it in the face, and it's like, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. And this tiny little shell was like, no, 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 you got this. All because this same journey happened. And Nana Connie was like, no, you're going to do it. You got to go do it. You don't need to worry about me because I'm not always going to be here. And it's that moment when you're holding yourself back from the great things you can have, all because you are too afraid of losing what you have in this moment. And I'm here to say that, like, I've done that before. Like, moving to Orlando was one of those moments. Quitting my job and starting to be a Broadway producer and going freelance was another one of those very crazy, insane moments. Talking into the ether and saying I want to be like a content creator, like one of those moments. It's like you never know what you're gearing up for or what greatness you can achieve if you don't try. And I think it's a sad moment when you see this sweet baby, sweet little shell, so scared of stepping out of that comfort zone because he's so afraid of losing somebody that he loves so much, to go find all of the loves, like all of that family. And so it meant a lot to me, because how can a story about a shell help me live my life better and do the things that I need to do? And the fun part is, like, I mean, the rest of the world doesn't need to know what's going on in my life, but some of you might know that everything I just said screams, okay, you need this message right at this moment. Um, and and then grief, like, I've had a lot of grief, and like it was just the way that it was handled that hit me so it gracefully. I don't know how to say that in another way, because I'm normally the strong one who carries the boulders. Wow, I am really crying. Okay, it's hitting me. I'm normally the strong one that carries everything for everybody else. And when I watched this, I realized that it was okay for me to carry my own grief and to feel that grief and to let it go cathartically rather than take it out on people, which is something people do. But also to understand that trauma is a part of life, pain is a part of life, grief is a part of life, and the best way to get through it, rather than blind yourself to it, is to confront it head on. You can't get through it if you don't face it. And you can't get through it if you don't take some sort of measure to do so. I do everything I do. Like, I have many things that I confront, like Maxwell was talking about. And I do it all clean, clear, no medications, no nothing. But it's hard. And maybe this movie is meant for a lot more than just, a sweet kid's story. It's meant for everybody to see that not only can you do these things, but there's grace found in grief and finding your peace with everything and just finding the narrative and the things that work for you. Yeah. So yeah, that quote really means a lot, because maybe my sound of myself connected to everything isn't necessarily a whistle, but maybe it's just in the silence or in the random YouTube videos I watch at night when I'm cleaning my office or watching random TV. It's just finding your peace.
Nana Connie has another quote that I love, where she tells Marcel, let's forget about being afraid. Just take the adventure. Because how many times in life do you find yourself saying, I'll do it when I hit this. I'll do it, but I need to save for this. We'll do that, but we can't because of this.
All the time.
All the time, right? And then you get to a point where you're like, I never did it. I never did it because I was afraid. I never did it because it was this reason or this reason. And instead, it's like, just take the adventure.
Guys, use your PTO. Go on vacations. Do things.
Go on vacation.
Don't sit at home. And Epcot is not a vacation. Although it is a lot of fun during season 1. What?
It is.
One thing that go ahead. I think this movie that you forget too is Dean's story is also being played out.
That's exactly what I was going to talk about.
Here, I've talked a lot. Go ahead.
No, please.
So he's also evolving here. At first, we see him say, "I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want you hearing my voice on this." And then Marcel opens him up a little bit. "Oh, who's that?" And you see the blurry picture of him and Jenny Slate on his computer, and he's hiding it. And then you see him opening up more about, okay, it was amicable, and you have Nana Connie ragging him. "Oh, is it ever really mutual?" And ragging him about that, and he's able to joke about it. And then by the end, you hear he's telling Marcel he's going on a date with a girl. And so though it's not as pronounced as Marcel's journey, we certainly see Dean evolve in his story through all of this, through his relationship grief, through where he's putting his energy into this documentary, is how he's channeling his sadness, how he's staying in the Marcel bubble himself. Like, he doesn't want to go find another apartment because his energy is focused on Marcel now. That's where he's channeling his emotions. And I think it's really beautiful, if not subtle, as well.
Yeah, that was the last thing I wanted to bring up about this topic is Dean. And there's one scene that really stands out to me. Marcel is drawing by candlelight, and the candle goes out, and Marcel's asking Dean for help, and Dean is really hesitant because he doesn't want to really be in the documentary. And Dean says something to the effect of, "Well, what would you do if I wasn't here?" And Marcel says, "There's a lot of things that I'm not able to get." And Marcel, and I'm paraphrasing, but he says something to the effect of, at a certain point you need to stop spending your life documenting things, and you need to engage with them. And, as a content creator or just as a human being in this increasingly social media, reality TV influencer, how many Instagram likes did I get society?
Whew.
Sometimes it's better just to put all of that shit aside and engage with your fellow human being. And I think that's Dean's journey. So as great as the lesson that Nana Connie imparts on Marcel is, the lesson that Marcel, this innocent little, what do we call him, a mollusk? This innocent little mollusk imparts on a grown man who is dealing with, because grief is not just, death. Grief is relationship, grief is trauma. There's all kinds of grief. Who's dealing with this grief, who is sort of in between homes, who's living in an Airbnb. I would argue that what Dean learns from Marcel about reconnecting with his fellow creature is really important. Sometimes put down your phone, log off online, have a fucking conversation, and engage.
Don't look through the lens every time. Look at
exactly. Look someone in the eyes and ask them about themselves. Then they'll ask you about you, and something really profound can come from that. So there's a lot in this 80-minute movie about a stop motion shell. But switching gears a little bit to something a little lighter, I want to talk just a little bit about the humor, because we're sitting here crying and we're sharing personal stories, but this movie is really funny.
So funny. Did anyone else notice, for just little subtle things that this movie does, how Marcel uses the honey to walk on the walls and everything? Did you notice how every single time they cut back to him standing in the honey, the puddle is just a little bit bigger?
Yes.
And the wall behind him is just a little bit dirtier because there's no one there to clean it up. And so he has to get,
where they're having a conversation and the grandma's accidentally standing on the keyboard and you could just see Z's being typed
every time.
But
it made me giggle so hard
when he's trying to teach his family member to walk up the wall with the honey, and he's just
his brother.
sliding,
and
you're watching it, and you're watching, you just see, and the honey's still there, and it's like,
that's what I want to do. Nathan Fielder is the voice of Justin, the brother. By the way, I just realized it this go around.
And his brother's like, I know what I'm doing, and sliding. And I was like,
well,
I know that life.
We've talked a bit about Marcel's innocence, and I think from that innocence comes humor, because when you're that innocent, you just say what you mean, right? There's not he is sharp, but there's one gag or joke that Marcel says that I think is the funniest bit in the movie. So he watches a YouTube video about paper lanterns.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yes.
He goes on the roof.
I was going to say the same thing. Okay, please.
He goes on a roof. He uses a coffee filter. He makes his own paper lantern and he sets it off and it floats in the sky and a dog starts barking. And Marcel goes,
ruining the moment.
He goes, there's something so elegant in the sky and this is how that dog is going to react. What a stupid idiot.
What a sad type of idiot.
Oh, what a sad type of idiot. Yes.
What a sad type of idiot.
Goodness, that's funny.
I could not get over the fact that he used a tennis ball for transportation. It was cute and hysterical. And I was like, if I were walking around my house and I saw a tennis ball just moseying around, I'd be like, what the is going on?
Marcel's scream is just adorable and hilarious.
Oh my God.
Anytime he's yelling at the dog to go away.
Arthur, no, go away.
Or when Marcel's like on the zip line in the shoe and you just hear
yeah. Or the scene
ice skating with the squirrel.
Or when he's getting interviewed by Leslie Stahl and she's asking how long it's been, and it's very serious. I couldn't tell you, but the space in my heart gets bigger and louder every day. And Dean? She's like, Dean, and he goes, it's 2 years. She goes, it's been 2 years. Nice to know.
Another little thing that made me cackle is, so Nana Connie talks about how she's become a gardener, and then they say how she's become friendly with the ants, and then you see this bee who's basically like stuffed and drunk, like lying on its side, like gurgling out the nectar. I'm like, this is so funny.
Or
his disdain for bugs and dogs is hilarious.
When he starts explaining,
I can smell your face.
When he starts explaining Nana Connie's history and how she came from the garage.
Oh my God.
That's why she got
that's why she has the
weird accent.
She traveled here by pocket as a child.
I love when Marcel talks about his family. I think my favorite line outside of the guy just being a guy called the Maestro is, I don't remember my aunt. She ate a pepper flake and flew and hit the wall. It was the funniest but most serious accident ever in our community.
Or when he talks about his cousin who went into the washing machine and never quite because, and that's why I hate the term "everything comes out in the wash."
I just stare at the window and wait for the fire trucks to come by.
Connie also had some great moments, like when the Kush hits meme was like, Kush,
oh my God,
Kush, Kush.
that meme is like, I'm like, I've been there. I feel that. So
I've used that.
Honestly, I might try and find that meme to make that the thumbnail for this episode.
Please do. Oh my God. Oh my God.
The best line reading Isabella Rossellini had that was when she's trying to convince Marcel to do the bit, and Dean intervenes, and she's like, Dean, please shut up. Just hearing Nana Connie tell Dean to shut the hell up.
Or when they see Leslie Stahl and Marcel goes, Nana Connie, do it. And she starts going, tick, 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 tick.
Yes!
Make the noise.
Oh my God.
Make the noise. I'm trying to think if there's any. There's plenty. There's plenty that is hilarious.
I mean, the quote that I said in the beginning, and where he's standing on the big chair, and he goes, people tell me my head's too big for my body. And I say, compared to what? Yeah, it's oh gosh. When he's talking about it, it's like, Oh, so it's like a movie without any lines and no one really knows what it's about.
Him disparaging the people coming to his house, like, I don't feel like this is the task force I was hoping for.
Well, and I think the
I'm
reason
pro-war.
so
The
much of the
war.
humor were, oh my God, the war.
To see if someone else is into. Like, of course I'm into peace. No, sorry, I'm a real war person. No, war. Actually, I sign all my personal letters. War. Let the battle begin, Marcel.
I think the reason so much of the humor works is Jenny Slate and Isabella Rossellini give incredible voice performances.
Well, and Jenny Slate is just funny on principle.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
There's nothing Jenny Slate can't do and convert it to hysterical. Like
the voice she got from Marcel, like,
that is Mona Lisa Saperstein we're talking about.
The best Saperstein. Money, please.
I don't know.
Just give her money.
Listen, just because the Saperstein siblings have successfully voiced two different great characters in great movies this year, doesn't ruin anything in life.
As a pun person, a master of puns, mind you, I always get a nice chuckle when he calls it the bread room, his bedroom, the bread room.
God, yes.
And he sleeps in bread.
So
it's my bedroom, but I also sleep on a piece of bread.
Here's a question that I
call it my
had.
bedroom.
Do they replace the bread every few weeks because it goes stale, or is that just because it would start molding, right? It's got to be fresh bread.
They'd have to. I imagine
Suspend disbelief. They have to. It wasn't moldy in the movie. Like, what are you doing? Like, don't ask logical questions about a movie with a shell of shoes on.
I care about the veracity of the film.
The flim. So that being said, a good segue moment, because, filmmaking, all that. How did we feel? Hey, how did we feel about the documentary style and the filmmaking, or the flim making, if you're me, because I can't spell things correctly. Are you yawning, sir?
No.
It's emotionally draining. I get it.
Documentary style of filmmaking. I thought it was fun. I think that's kind of the way, that's how Marcel was originally, right? Like that's what the video is, and he's talking to a camera about his life as a shell in this house. So any other way of doing it, I don't think would be as impactful or work as well, because there's multiple journeys that are going on at the same time that you have to really see to be a part of and to understand it and to keep the continuity with what Marcel was when Marcel started. So I think and I love that it plays into it as well. Like it's very self-aware of what it is, and Marcel makes it self-aware of what it is by calling Dean out and asking him questions, and Dean kind of being like, I don't, stop talking to me. Like, this isn't what we're here for.
Yes. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I think this movie works because of the meta mockumentary style. Mm-hmm. The making of the documentary is what makes this movie work, because you need Dean's story. You need kind of the background. Like if it's just the mockumentary of Marcel the Shell, it's just a YouTube video at this point. Right. It's not poignant if we don't have what's going on kind of in the in-between.
Well, yeah, getting the stories of, like, because it's not just about Marcel, it's about Marcel and everything in this world, and opening the world up too, which was something that we talked about earlier. And like, I think the part that I love is that you get Dean's story, you get Connie's story, you get the whole family, you get Larissa and Mark, you get enough into them. You also get the 60 Minutes crew, and you get those little pieces too. You get the people who are fans, who are coming to be like, oh, pictures, please. And by the end of it, you see like all of these intersectionalities, and it just really gives it so much heart, because everybody in the story, even Larissa and Mark, who hate each other absolutely, on a very, very deep level, even they have to come back together over just this tiny little
Yeah.
presence. And it's like, wow, wow,
What
it's stunning.
what really struck me, and I think Dan touched on this a little bit, is it has a sort of like metatextual postmodern approach to it. Like I believe very strongly that art is therapy. And here we have Dean Fleischer Camp ostensibly playing himself. As you said, there is a photo of him and Jenny Slate, so we can assume that the woman he's getting divorced from is Jenny Slate. They were married in real life. The fact that these two artists are, as humans, confident enough to weave, however, shallow or fabricated a version of themselves into this fictional mockumentary film is really powerful. And I have to imagine that through making this film, expanding these YouTube shorts into a 85-minute feature and bringing themselves into that, they were able to really learn and grow. But what I think is so interesting is, looking up Dean Fleischer Camp, he's only done documentaries or shorts before. And this is a fictional narrative film. He is a beautiful filmmaker, right? Like, you take the music by Disaster Piece, you take the cinematography by Bianca Klein. There is gorgeous nature shots, the way the camera lingers around the arboretum, the way it settles on just the sunlight in the window at the end, the way that we see, for example, I think one of the most arresting images in the film is the little like plant tableau that Marcel builds as a shrine or, mausoleum for his grandmother. Dean Fleischer Camp is a very sensitive, beautiful filmmaker. He's not just this guy who like made a couple YouTube videos and all of a sudden was given money. Like he's got the chops. He's an engaging on-screen presence. He has a nice voice, but this film is beautifully made. And I think that, on top of everything else we've talked about, is why it's so good. Like if in the hands of a less capable filmmaker, it could have come across as twee or saccharine or like as a joke, but there is never one moment where this feels like it's a joke. It feels like if this shell and these creatures were real, like this is what that film would be. Like it has an authenticity to it, even though it's like a stop motion animated shell voiced by someone who was on SNL for a while and got fired too early because they cursed on air. Stupid. She should have been a star there, but I would argue her career has been just fine without it. But anyways, like beautifully made film, and I'll be surprised if we get a better debut narrative film from a filmmaker this year.
I mean, something that I was gonna say, like Marcel's little footprints in the honey, like you can feel like those are like literally Jenny and Dean's footprints all over this movie. And it's like you can feel that they put, I know, right? They put so much love. Yeah, I love metaphors. Oh my God. Hooray for metaphors. Like they put
exactly.
Like they put so much love into it. And like for anybody to be able to work that way after they have gotten divorced and to take part of their actual real life story and put it on screen and use it expositionally. Like, guys, that's the best amicable breakup I've ever heard of. And it sounds like Jenny Slate is the queen of amicable breakups because, like, she has many. It sounds like, yeah, and props. Like it's just,
listen, this woman got to date Dean Fleischer Camp and Chris Evans.
And
by the way, how do you think Dean Fleischer Camp feels about the fact that her rebound from him was fucking Captain America?
Ooh, so rough. That is, yeah, but again, you talk about these, just even with the documentary style, I mentioned the attention to detail, the wall being dirtier every single time with more footprints, the little stains on windows that every time gets opened or gets walked on, it's still there because there's no one wiping it up. Like that is just it, with how much work goes into stop motion, they could have just used the same little shot and do it every single time when he's standing there by the honey, but instead they made it a little messier, a little bit more honey on the ground. And that attention to detail, I think, is such a big part of making of making a masterpiece.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned stop motion, because I am a massive fan of stop motion animation, whether it's Henry Selick or what Leica has done, or trailer just came out for Guillermo del Toro's adaptation of Pinocchio. The stop motion animation in this film from the Chiodo brothers, who did the stop motion on Elf, they did puppetry on Team America, they designed the critters in Critters, this team goes way back, is fantastic. And the way the stop motion so elegantly exists in the real world and interacts with the humans is perfect. And I'm really gratified that for best animated film at the Oscars, there's a ratio that needs to exist between animation and real life, and there is enough animation here, so hopefully this will get that sort of awards love down the line. But the animation is fantastic.
Also, I'd be remiss not to mention that in a kind of small part, it's also a music documentary of Marcel as a performer. We see him performing solo for Nana Connie and the sweet little song he does. Then you see him joking around, kind of practicing with Dean with the song about lingering, I believe. And Dean kept messing up, at least according to Marcel. And then having him finish with Peaceful Easy Feeling at the kind of the family memorial for Nana Connie was so beautiful.
Little Marcel singing is the best.
There's to what you're saying, Dan, there's a line where Nana Connie's talking to Dean, and she's like, he's putting on a little bit of a performance for you. And then in the 60 Minutes interview, when Leslie Stahl asked Dean what was it that Dean found in Marcel to engage him, Dean's like, he had pizzazz. He does. Marcel has so much pizzazz.
He does.
Some moxie.
Not the fact that he's a living shell.
Well, he could be a living shell and boring like his brother.
That's true.
Who doesn't know how to climb on honey.
Does not know how to honey. So, there's one final thing that I want to talk about here, and I think we've touched on it a little bit, but I think it's a good place to end. When we look at what's regarded as great cinema, and we look at the output from whether you believe in auteur theory, when you look at even A24, cynicism and grit and violence and that sort of stuff tends to be what leads the way, right? Without going on some sort of soapbox or diatribe, we're living in complicated times, politically, socially, emotionally, financially, you name it. The last 6 to 8 years have been challenging for a lot of people, with the pandemic, with however you feel about the previous president. We've been, we have not been quiet about the fact here on Ember with our boys reviews that we were not fans of our previous president. And that's an understatement. But there's something to be said about unabashed empathy and beauty in an increasingly dark world, and coming out swinging and being like, we're not gonna grit this up, because there's another version of this movie where they took the YouTube videos and they made it more serious or dark or gritty, and it has those moments because it deals with real emotions. But everyone just, you want to start with Allison or Amber, just touch a little bit about what the impact is of, unabashedly being empathetic in a dark world. And I think that more than anything is what we can learn from Marcel and from this film.
I mean, I just busted into tears talking about all of the messages that this movie has. And, it's one of those movies that rather than being like, oh my God, it's my favorite movie ever, I want to thank Dean and Jenny for making this, because it's this is what the world needs to see. Yes, we love our superheroes. We love, I have dragons and Disney characters behind me. We all know what Amber loved. Yep. Hello. We all know what I love, and I'm wearing a Disney shirt. It's a thing. But when it comes down to it, some of the simplest stories are the ones that are they're told from a place with heart, and they're the ones that you don't expect are going to hit you. Like this movie, for all intents and purposes, if you broke it down to me without saying what movie it is, if you just said, okay, so it's an anthropomorphic shell who lives in a house and uses honey to climb up the walls and uses a tennis ball as transportation, who goes out on an adventure in the world, I'd be like, okay, well, my 7-year-old niece would love this. But from the get, knowing, like seeing just the little pieces of it and seeing the trailers and everything, I came into it kind of understanding that this was going to be a different movie going experience. And then they proved this completely accurate. But it's told with such empathy and such respect for the material and respect for the situations that it's easy to resonate. And anybody and there are people that don't like this movie and they're insane. Like this movie is so sweet and precious and adorable, and
Who hurt
it,
you?
yeah, like
Pretty much.
show
Who
me on,
pissed in your Cheerios, homie?
show me on the doll where you were like,
Oh God.
But it's just it it's devastating to see people not getting the message. And it's because as a society we've just seen, like we've experienced too much, guys. Reset society. It's just, and for me this was a good reset. It really took me back to that place where I was like, it's art. It's not just a movie to make money. It is art. It is truly something that if you were to paint a portrait, like this movie would be full of synesthesia colors and just light and life. And that's what it did for me. It like made me feel something so deeply. So yeah, that's my take. Somebody else take the mic. Like, good.
Dan?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as empathetic and sweet as this movie is, I still look at Marcel's growth because he is kind of a cynic. Look at the characters or the things he looks down upon. It's the things that aren't as sentient. Like he is very awestruck by Dean because he's bigger and potentially smarter, can do things that he can't. But like he makes fun of the dog, calls it a sad idiot. He doesn't like Arthur, Dean's dog. He hates bugs. I go to this one scene after Nana Connie passed where he's trying to get the vegetable out of the pot, and this black little ladybug looking thing comes up and he's like, I don't know what you want. I am not her. She's not here to help you. I can't do it. And then you see him in the next shot sitting under a leaf as it's raining. The bug comes back and he's like, hey. And the bug like flutters its wings a little bit and they just sit there. And like a change in him from that moment. Like you see him evolving with just one word, hey. And I think that's what this movie is. It's teaching us not to punch down on those who we perceive or who are at a disadvantage or at a disability or perceived in society as lesser than, and to not be so awestruck by those who are perceived as greater than. Because as we learn later, that Marcel starts making fun of Dean too. And he's like, okay, I have the ability. You're not perfect. I can tease you about this stuff that you're not good at making sounds during my song. So as cynical as it is, it's also a lesson in how and in empathy, but maybe not so bubbly as a movie like the trailer might show you. And I guess my shirt says it all. Don't forget to love each other is kind of what I take from it. And going on to a tangent here, like I lost my father a little more than a year ago. A few months later, I lost my grandmother. I moved back home to be closer to my mom. I came out. Like this last 14 months has been a lot, and I am very, very lucky. I want to make it that, going to the theme of community that we talked about, I'm very lucky that I have the communities that I'm part of. And this movie only reinforced how we need to take care of each other, and how having these good communities, these healthy relationships are very important, and how it's important that we pull our weight when we can, and that we rely on those to pick us up when we can't, and that we share the load.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think a lot of the time in this day and age, empathy gets looked at as a sign of weakness. Caring for other people is a sign of weakness. It's always about looking out for number one and taking care of yourself. And, you know, bigger, badder, better is where we're at. And Marcel, like he's happy to be where he is. Does he want more? Yes, but he doesn't know how quite to get it. And when it's there for him, he uses something that he is to be afraid and to not go after it. Because of how many times do we not do things because we're scared of the inevitable disappointment? And, you know, what if he finds his family, but they're still not the same, or they're even more spread out, or there's all of these things, and the idea that it's wrong to be empathetic or to be understanding, or all of those feelings get brushed to the wayside with this movie. And you watch Dean go through that, like you said, with him just filming Marcel from, it's a selfish standpoint of like, this could make a really good documentary, to we're opening up, we're becoming friends. He's starting to want to help and want to do things for him because of that empathy rather than sympathy. My favorite quote in this entire movie is in the beginning when he asks, you know, why do I smile so much? Or why do I smile all the time? And he goes, why? And goes, because it's worth it. Because it is. It at the end of the day, you have a choice on how you're gonna make your day, and how you choose to end it, and how you want to live it, and who you want to be around, and how you go about finding and being around those people. And I think this movie, in so many small, subtle ways, talks about that, and talks about being that for people. And that it's, while life is going to happen, you have the choice to either do it and do it with a smile as best you can, or do it and find the silver lining, because no matter what, there's always something to be thankful and grateful for. No matter how hard it is, you could, whatever it is, there's always something. And I think Marcel is the epitome of just that. And we could all learn to be just a little bit more positive and a little bit more grateful.
Gosh, Allison, we're gonna need to keep you around as, like, you know, motivational speaker in pocket for whenever we're having rough mental health days, because dang, bro.
This shit's gonna suck. And regardless of what happens, is we're all gonna be sad, and we're all gonna have something. And it's not to take away from, you know, my problem is this and your problem is that, or, you know, or like a one-up thing. Or, I mean, how many times do we find ourselves going, I don't want to talk about me because I know someone else has it worse, right? And I think that's a lot of the times, right? I think one thing I learned in therapy that made me sob at the very end of my therapist appointment, that I had to sit with for a week and a half, was talking with my therapist, saying, I don't ask for help and I don't do these things because everyone else has other things going on. Mine isn't that important. It's not that serious. I can get through it. And it turned into, he's like, I'm hearing you're saying you don't want to burden people with your problems. I'm hearing I don't want to burden people with me. And that's how so many of us kind of go through life. And that's kind of how Dean's going through it, when you really think about it, with how he first meets Marcel and what he's doing. And then he starts relying on this little shell, and this little shell who's, you know, feels like Nanny Connie is relying on him. She does what she needs to do so he doesn't have to feel that way. And it's just putting on all these little brave fronts in that sense, when really, if we all just, like, if Dean just went and got the fucking match, like, we wouldn't have that great little quote from Marcel. But at the same time, you bet Dean would go get it for him now, kind of thing, to when you talk about growth and everything. So those are my little tangents.
I love that. I love that. Like, I could tell you were getting emotional too. So like, oh yes, it's such a beautiful movie. It's perfect. It's humorous. It's cute. It's like, you don't have to, you know, you don't have to like shield eyes from it. You
Mhm.
don't have to keep people from seeing it. Like, and I don't feel like anybody who sees it would hate it. So I need it to be released in more theaters, please, so that, or like to streaming, because there's still a lot of people who are not going out due to pandemic things.
Mhm.
And like, they need to see this movie. This movie is by far, it's my top of the year. Like I said, it's one of my top five. It's one of Dan's top fives. I don't know about Maxwell, because, it's going to take like at least 15 more viewings for him to be able to pull that together.
Yeah,
Um,
judgment.
and like, it beats Encanto out of my top five, and I've watched that movie like way too many freaking times.
There's so much nothing. She's the best. She. What? But my dad has pink shoes. So did my grandfather.
You wouldn't mind indulging me as a writer, as a poet myself. I would like to read the poem that Nana Connie reads right before her passing.
Do
One
it.
of one of my favorite moments from the movie. I believe it's called "The Trees." The trees are coming into leaf, like something almost being said. The recent buds relax and spread. Their greenness is a kind of grief. Is it that they are born again and we grow old? No, they die too. Their yearly trick of looking new is written down in rings of grain. Yet still the unresting castles thresh in full-grown thickness every May. Last year is dead, they seem to say. Begin afresh, afresh, afresh.
So pretty. So sweet. I, whew.
I think increasingly empathy is in distressingly short supply in this world. And I would just caution everyone, before you judge other people, before you decide to be snarky or cynical, take a second and look around. You're alive. We live on this earth that, despite, our best efforts to kill it with our fossil fuel emissions and carbon, is quite beautiful. And if you put in the time and effort, you can find your people. It's not
Wait, you
easy.
mean my NFT is killing the world?
Data mining. It's not easy. It takes effort, but it's worth it. And I think there's a lot we can learn from this tiny little shell and this gorgeous film.
I think it boils down to, and I think this film is a really good epitome of a reason, a season, a lifetime, of how you meet people and how they come into your life. And again, with the community, the man and woman that were living there, there's the reason it gave, that's where the family lived. A season, people who come and go, and maybe Dean was a season for a little bit, or Leslie or whatever, Leslie Stahl coming in was a reason, and then you have your lifetime and the community that you have for a lifetime. And when you can kind of go through and see all of those things and see just literally the biggest metaphor of life and relationships in an 80-minute movie, I think is one of the most beautiful things I've ever watched, and done so well.
This movie's encapsulated to me in Marcel's playing the noodle as an instrument. As funny as that is, the two times he plays it, he plays taps and Amazing Grace, two funeral songs. So you have the humor and the grief and the sadness all wrapped up into two moments so strangely yet so indescribable. And to me, that's what this movie is. It's sharing and understanding grief, but still recognizing and embracing the humor in life.
It's lovely. It's just lovely.
I think it's safe to say we could all sit here and continue to wax poetic about this movie for another few hours, but I think that is an amazing place to stop. I want to thank everyone who watched this for spending your time. Let us know in the comments what you think about the movie. If you haven't seen it, and now you know everything that happens, but if you haven't seen it, go to your independent theater or wherever and see it, or I have to think it's going to be streaming soon enough on iTunes and Vudu and whatnot. Before we get out of here, Dan, what do you got going on? Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at dhouse77. I also host the Fancast at 4 podcast, usually bi-weekly. Upcoming, we have Colin Morris, and we ask, what if Damien Chazelle directed a Fantastic Four film? So be on the lookout a week from Friday. So the the first Friday in August.
Oh, I can't wait.
When that plans on dropping. Otherwise, I co-host sometimes on the Montyverse. I hang out with these cool cats and kittens here from time to time. And I hang out with cool people because I truly believe I'm only as good as the company I keep.
Woo! Like snaps, claps, applause, standing ovation.
How about you?
Burn the house down.
You guys can find me over on Flick and Reel every now and then when they aren't doing things on crazy East Coast or West Coast time when I'm sleeping with our speakeasy, sometimes over there on News and Views. But you can find me every Tuesday on your audio platform of choice. Subscribe to Flick and Reel, and you can listen to me talk about movies that I've never seen with a guest who loves them. I probably should have seen it. It's called You've Never Seen It. Coming up, I got Sleepless in Seattle is our next one to be dropped with my dear friend Kaylee Vaughn. So it went on a little Nora Ephron kick, and then we're gonna go in the complete opposite direction and hit a couple of David Fincher movies. Ooh. And then we take it real dark again. So
I'm kind of curious about which one you're doing with Nick. Which one are you doing with Nick? Don't say what Nick, but
we don't know yet. We haven't. It hasn't been decided.
And he's a big nerd, so you'll have a good time with
that. That's what it boils down to. All of our past episodes are out there wherever you get your audio podcasts. Again, subscribe to Flick and Reel. Find me on Twitter at Allison Salamone. You can find You've Never Seen It on Twitter as well at You've Never Seen It FNR. And that's really it.
And Amber, I'll let it take it for the both of us.
Oh, so my lovely counterpart is Maxwell on the Twitter, Maxwell Inc. on the Instagram. I am Takara Kanashi everywhere. It means sad treasure, and that is what I am. To somebody somewhere. But we are Ember Productions, or Ember Produx on Twitter, Instagram, etc. We do a lot of things. We are theater producers. We also love movies. We love Broadway, obviously. I have a feeling that somebody's coming up to New York soon, and we're trying to see a certain musical about 6 ex-wives of Henry VIII, and maybe a demon straight from hell singing about the whole being dead thing. So we might have to break those down. I'm thinking that might be a thing. We also have a lot of stuff coming. I know we're doing a review of Nope, which we just saw and loved. Horses in the sky. I don't know. I made up a song. But we have a lot of really great content, especially some upcoming Broadway content. And you know, you never know who you might see on this channel. So stay tuned, keep checking it out. And of course, you'll see our two friends, Dan and Allison, here from time to time, I'm sure. And as we said, that's the M. I'm the Burr. We put the M in Burr into Ember. You guys have a great, great whatever you're doing. And go see Marcel if you haven't, and if you have, go see it again because dang, guys, it's so good. That being said, have a wonderful night. Peace.